Well, we are going to start the final section of our course, which is presenting our character. As you might already know, in this section we're going to pose our character. Well, we can't show her to others in this A pose, right? Which might look unusual. We will give her a nice smile or other expressions. We will also create a better environment for her and light the environment, and take photos of our character in that environment. And finally, we will be able to show our artwork to the world. So our first job will be posing our character. And I did something to demonstrate what posing means. If you look at the hands of our character, she can do this. And in this lesson, we will learn what is driving this deformation and how to achieve something similar. Well, I actually borrowed the character arm and applied some sort of controller to deform the fingers. And the controller I'm talking about is called a skeleton. And in Blender it's called armature. But anyway, you know what skeleton is, right? Because in real life, skeleton and bones allow us to move our body and the parts of our body. And in 3D graphics, the process of creating these skeleton objects and linking them to mesh objects is called rigging. So in essence, rigging is creating controllers for characters to be able to deform or animate them later. And as you have already seen, if we hide this 3D mesh, we have this skeleton object in Blender. As I said, it's called armature object, but it's the same concept. It's built of these small bones. These are called bones. And the way it deforms our object is we parent this 3D mesh to the armature object, to the skeleton object, and we deform or we animate the skeleton. And because the hand or the 3D mesh is parented to this armature, it animates too, just like this here. And we will learn how to create something similar now. So let's go open a new file. We're going to create a simple object which resembles a finger. The cylinder, we need to have less vertices, maybe 12 is enough. Go to edit mode, S, Shift Z to scale, Control R to cut some edge loops. Actually, we can cut a lot more edge loops than these. Yeah, let's Control B, maybe do that, right? Because these will be the joints which will be deformed. Now, in order to deform this object, we need to create an armature object, Shift A, armature, and single bone. We don't have to worry about this because these are add-ons which I activated. We will be talking about them in the next course. So create a single bone, press 1. In object mode, GZ, bring the bone down here. And the armature object also have edit mode, which you can access by pressing tab. Let's select the tip of this bone. This is a single bone, GZ, and you can select the tip and press E, Z to extrude another bone. Just like in 3D modeling, you can select, press E to extrude, Z to constrain along the axis. Now we have these three bones which are going to control our fingers deformation. Actually, we can select the armature object, go to object properties, viewport display, and make it in front to make it always look in front. Now, as I said, we need to parent this mesh object to the armature so that the armature can deform the mesh. And you need to follow some specific instructions here or specific steps. So select the object, shift select the armature, Control P, like normal parenting. But here we are going to choose one of the armature deform options. And specifically to make things easier, we need to select with automatic weights. Now that we have parented, we can test if our skeleton or bones or armature can deform our mesh. For that, we have a specific mode of the armature object, which is called a pose mode. There, we can pose the armature and as a result, pose the mesh. So we can select the armature, go to object mode and change this to pose mode. You can also change to pose mode by pressing Control Tab. So in object mode, you press Control Tab and go to pose mode. So in pose mode, we can select individual bones and rotate them. And as you can see, we can bend and deform this finger-like object. And there is a lot of new concepts and new information regarding how these are connected to each other, how the armature is deforming the mesh, and whether we can tweak it or not. There's a lot of things. But as I already said, this course focuses mostly on the character creation part. We create a character and give a simple pose, right? But in the next course, which will be character animation, we're going to learn everything about this armature object, the deformation. For example, if you select the mesh object and go to modifiers, you have this armature modifier, which indicates that our object is connected to this armature object, which is called armature. If you select this, you can see it's called armature. If we rename it to anything, it will be reflected here, controller object. And it's connected to our mesh object using vertex groups here. And if you select the mesh object again and go to object data properties, we have these vertex groups. And we can also tweak how much weight each vertex has in this group by going to weight painting. Control tab, weight painting, and select the vertex groups and paint the vertex weights on them. And we're going to talk about these things in a lot more detail in the next course, but in this course we will keep things much simpler. There are also a lot of other modifiers, deform modifiers especially, which will help us in rigging our characters like this and animating them. We also have the constraints, object constraints, and also bone constraints, which are extremely helpful in rigging an animation. So yeah, this part of the video has been an advertisement of the next course, right? So now we will focus on quick questions. Please try to remember what we have learned in this lesson and try to answer those questions on your own. So let's start the questions. The first question, what is rigging? Rigging is the process of creating controllers and binding them to 3D mesh objects in order to be able to deform and animate them. And for characters, we mostly use skeleton object to rig and animate them. How do you link the skeleton object to the 3D mesh object to be able to deform it in Blender? So it was pretty simple. After you create your 3D mesh and you create the skeleton object inside it, you go to object mode, select the mesh object, shift select the skeleton object or armature object, and then press Ctrl P and choose one of the deform options. Normally we use automatic weights, which makes things a lot easier. Final question, how do you deform the parented mesh using the skeleton object? Well, for deforming an animation, we have a special mode on the skeleton object, which is called pose mode. You can access the pose mode by pressing Ctrl Tab, or you can come here to mode selector and go to pose mode. Here you can select individual bones, rotate them, scale them, and when they are not connected, you can even move them. And by keyframing the deformations, you can animate them. For example, press K, you keyframe rotation, you go to another keyframe, change the transformation, select them, K, keyframe the rotation, and here you have this simple animation. So that was all for this lesson. See you in the next one. In this lesson, we're going to learn about shape keys in Blender. Shape keys can allow us to change shapes of 3D meshes. And essentially, we're going to use shape keys to give facial expressions to our character, like you see here. She's now a bit dissatisfied or sad. We can make her a little happier like this. So we utilize shape keys to give facial expressions. And we also have the ability to move the eyes using bones. We will learn this too, but in a future video. But in this video, we're going to focus on shape keys. So we're going to learn the most important aspects and features of the shape keys. So the way it works is this. You create a basis, which will be this shape. It's always this shape, and you don't have to do anything with this. And then you create a key. And in this key, you will create new shape, and this key will hold that shape, and you change the number to interpolate between the basis shape and your custom shape. So let's go to edit mode. While the key is selected, let's go to edit mode and change the shape in any way you want. Go out of edit mode, and as you can see, the number is currently 0, and we can increase the number to 1 to interpolate between these two shapes, right? The basis shape and your custom shape. You can continue creating new keys, and for each key you can create a new shape. And now you have this shape, right? For the third shape, we'll do something a little different. So this is the third shape, as you can see. You can also mix them by using the numbers between 0 and 1, just like that, right? And this is probably all you need to know to give facial expressions to the character's face. But we're going to talk a little more about other options that we have here. For example, we have the range between minimum number and maximum number. We can actually change the maximum number. Currently we have from 0 to 1, but we can increase the number, for example, to 2, right? We can change it up to 10. So what it will do is it will extrapolate the change. It will predict the next movement of the vertices, just like that. So it can be useful. It's useful to exaggerate the shape. You can also go to negative number, for example, -1, let's say, and it will extrapolate to the negative direction, just like that. And we also have this X button, which resets all the keys so that you see the original shape. We also have the solo button. If you click the solo, you can quickly switch between these custom shapes. You can also select a vertex group. If you have a vertex group, you can make the keys affect only the vertices of that vertex group, and you can change the shapes relative to other shapes. For example, you can change the first shape relative to the second shape by selecting the second shape here, and if you change the shape now, it will move the vertices relative to this shape. So yeah, it can be useful sometimes, but most often we keep the basis and we change shape relative to the base shape, which is more predictable and more understandable. And one thing I forgot to mention, you can change the names of the shapes. For example, you can change this one smile, that we are going to do with our character's face. Now let's go back to our character's face and create one more facial expression maybe. So this is our character face. We need to be in object mode. Now we will create a new key. Let's reset all the shapes. Actually, I bring back the eyes too. Select this, Alt-G to reset the movement of the bone. Let's create a new key. Let's call it maybe angry. This is also quite angry, right? So we will create an angry look. At this moment, you really need to look at a lot of reference images, because there are, I don't know, maybe thousands of different expressions you can make for a human face. I have a few reference images here. I will leave them for you. You can go to Pinterest and search for facial expression chart or sheet or something similar, and you can find lots and lots of reference images for characters' facial expressions. Creating an angry look is not really difficult, so we can do that easily. Come back to our character face. Let's go to edit mode. I created this angry key and go to edit mode. While this is active, we'll try to make an angry look. We need to make the eyelashes follow the eyelids, so let's create a new key for the eyelashes and call it angry. Go to edit mode and we'll try to make them follow just like that. So this was a very rough and quick expression. You can fine tune it, you can spend more time on it to make it look even better. Also, the head usually leans forward a little when a person is angry. So yeah, this is it. I hope you have learned something in this lesson. Now it's a challenge time, and you know what the challenge is going to be. Using shape keys, please create at least 3 facial expressions for your character and share your work with us on our Discord community server. Again, if you cannot find our Discord server, you can go to the final lesson in this course, the bonus section, and check the resources section. You can find the link there. So yeah, go ahead and do that before moving on to the next lesson, and I'll see you in the next lesson. In this lesson, we're going to create a skeleton for our character using Rigify add-on. Before doing anything else, please clean up your character or duplicate it to keep one as a backup. Once you have done that, we can start the process. First of all, we need to enable the Rigify add-on in Blender's preferences. Come to add-ons. Rigify is a built-in add-on. Look for Rigify and enable it. After that, you will be able to add a Rigify rig or skeleton to the scene. Of course, we could have created the skeleton from scratch from the single bone, but Rigify gives us ready-made skeleton with all the bones, even for the face, which we are going to delete. So we don't have to do anything from scratch. So let's go Rigify, no, armature object, Rigify and human. As you can see, the default skeleton is about 2 meters tall, but our girl is not that tall. She is about 160. So we will scale the skeleton S to scale it down. This is a good scale. I also want to lower the head and other objects down a little. So let's hide the skeleton for now. I just didn't like this shape, so let me select all these objects. GZ to bring them down a little. Select the shirt, go to edit mode, select this loop, and GZ with proportional editing enabled, just like that. I think this is nicer. Yeah, this looks much better than before. Alt H to unhide the skeleton. We could have lowered the head even more, but I think that's enough. Now we need to adjust the bones so that it fits our character. In wireframe view, we'll start with the leg, select this bone, GX. If the pair doesn't move, we need to enable X-axis mirror. You can enable that from here too. GX, we will move the leg too a little, GX. 3 from the side view. You should fit the bones at an angle like this, not on a straight line, because this will help to deform the leg later. But we need to move the head bones backwards a little. And you know what? We are going to delete the bones of the face by pressing X. I deleted them. We can delete this too. The bones for the ears, we can delete them too. And there is a little bone here. We don't need that one either. The bones are much cleaner now. Now the arms. So the most work we are going to do is for the hands. We need to change a lot of things here. I mean, we don't have to change a lot of things. We will simply delete some fingers and create them from scratch. X, delete them. This one too. X. We will fit one finger and we will duplicate that. We need to fit this too. So we can place the bones right here, but we need to know one thing. We need to pay attention, be careful with one thing, although it's not really important for this very simple rig. We need to pay attention to the bone rotation. Well, I'm in object mode and I'd like to show you one thing. As you can see, this finger is going to bend or rotate to this direction, right? And the bone should be able to rotate to this direction too. And the rotation axis should be X. I mean, the bones should rotate around X axis. And this direction should be Z axis. Go to edit mode, Shift Z for wireframe view. We can visualize the bone orientations by coming here to armature properties, viewport display. We can turn on the axis and see the orientation of each bone. So the direction towards which the finger is going to bend should be Z direction. And the bone should rotate around x-axis, as I said. So in order to fix the orientation, we can rotate the bones by pressing R, but much better solution is the bone roll. We can roll the bones around its own y-axis so that we can fix the orientation. We can use this tool, bone roll tool, and fix the orientation problem. We can also press Ctrl R to roll the bones, just like that. So now I hope the thumb is going to bend correctly. We can turn off axis for a moment and position these bones correctly. So let's go. First of all, we will bring this here. Now we will start the next important step, parenting the mesh objects to the skeleton, which is also called skinning. Remember, we are going to parent only the head mesh, not any other small parts, and neither the hair. We're going to rig them in the next video. So let's go ahead and hide these objects and the inner mouse objects. We can hide them from here actually. Now we can select the skeleton, and select everything else so that the skeleton is the last active selection, because we need to select everything else first and then the skeleton, so that it's active selection. Currently it's active, it's highlighted more yellow color. Now we can bind the meshes to the skeleton by pressing Ctrl P. As you learned from the previous videos, we are going to use automatic weights. Let's go. So I think the process has been successful. We can test it by selecting the skeleton, Ctrl Tab to pose mode, and we can rotate the bones. Yeah, we have skinned the character correctly. Finally, she can move her body, her hands, arms, everything. We can also test the fingers. Let's see if they work well. Yeah, the fingers are correctly rigged. So if you're worried that you have changed too much and you don't know how to go back, it's very easy. You come here in the pose mode, you come here to pose menu and you clear the transform for all the bones. You can also go back to that pose and save it. For example, keyframe it, K. We mostly changed the location and rotation, mostly rotation. And here in frame 0, you can clear the pose. And this way you can animate. Now your character can do this, which is an extremely ugly animation. But anyway, that's all I wanted to show you in this video. Now it's time for quick questions. Now let's start the quick questions. The first question: around which local axis should bones normally rotate? Well, although this is more related to animation, we need to take this into account while creating this skeleton to our character. And the answer is the bones should normally rotate around their x-axis. And the x-axis is a local x-axis, not global. We will learn more about that in the next course. So the next question: what is bone roll and how do we roll the bones in edit mode? Bone roll in Blender means the bone rotates around its own local y-axis, and we can roll the bones by pressing Ctrl R in edit mode. The next question: what is skinning? Well, once you create the skeleton, you need to bind the 3D meshes to the skeleton so that the skeleton can deform the 3D meshes, and the process of binding is sometimes called skinning. So that was all for this lesson. I hope to see you in the next one. So in the last video we rigged our character and created this animation. I'm going to remove the animation, select the bones, go to pose mode, select everything here and delete. And to reset the positions of the bones, the rotations, you can press Alt R, Alt G just in case if you moved any bones, and Alt S if you scaled any of them. Go out of pose mode. Now we are going to rig smaller parts of our body. First of all, the most difficult part, not the most difficult, it's more difficult in this lesson compared to other things we're going to do. So let's start Alt H to unhide everything, and let's hide the hair for now. Shift X, select the bones. First we're going to extrude bones for the eyes. To control the eyes, go to edit mode of the bones. Now when we activate X-axis mirror here or here, we can extrude bones in a kind of mirrored way. I mean, we can extrude to both sides at the same time, but for that we don't press E. We should press Shift E, but remember we need to activate X-axis mirror for this to work. Now we bring this to the middle of the eye, go out of edit mode, select the eyes. Let's come closer. Actually, I'm going to hide the head too. And another thing we should do is to apply the modifiers and make the eyes two separate objects. So let's apply the modifier, mirror, apply, and the inner eyes too. Let's apply the mirror modifier. We go to edit mode, select everything, press P, and we separate the loose parts, the parts which are not connected to anything, and the outer eyes. Go to edit mode, select everything, P by loose parts. Now both eyes are separate objects. So let's select the outer shell, or cornea, I believe it was. Select this edge loop and press Shift S and bring the cursor to the center of this selection. This way we can rotate by selecting the 3D cursor as a pivot point and rotate around it. RZ, for example, if you look in this view, RZ, now you can see the eye is rotating but the inner part is not following. We can do that by simply parenting the objects. We don't have to parent this object to a bone. We can parent it to the outer shell. Control P, simply object. Now we can go to material preview, select the outer part, and RZ. You can see we can rotate. We will do the same here, but before that let's create the bone. Select the bone, go to edit mode, select this tip of the bone, Shift S, selection to cursor. Now it went straight to the cursor position. Now we can create the bone which controls the eye rotation, EY, I think, yeah. So these bones will control the eyes. So we're going to do something else. We're going to create another bone over here, so that these two bones will track to that, point to that all the time, so that we can move this bone anywhere, and these two bones will follow the position of this bone. So let's create that bone too, extrude. We can roughly match the height of the bones. It's not extremely important, we can always move and change the eye rotation. EZ, maybe we will put it a bit further away. Let's look from the front view. We'll create some more bones, Shift E, put it over here, roughly matching the position where the eye is looking at. Create two bones here, EZ, just like that. We can move all of this, GZ. Now we can delete some bones. We can delete this, for example. We could have deleted this earlier. Let's delete this too. Let's delete these two. Now we can leave other bones. I think we're ready to start binding them. This is slightly different. We're going to do a slightly different thing to parent these two bones. We will parent the objects simply to the bones. We're not going to deform the eyes. We'll select this outer shell, Shift select the bones, Control Tab. Now this is a different workflow, as you can see. Again, repeat after me. Select the outer shell, Shift select the bones. I'm not clicking Control P yet, just yet. I'm just going to the pose mode of the bone while the objects are selected and select this bone because I want to parent the object to specifically this bone. And now we can press Control P. So let me repeat this one more time. Select the outer shell in object mode, as you can see. Shift select the bones, the armature object, and Control Tab to go to the pose mode of the armature object. We can press Shift Z and select this bone because we are going to parent the object to this bone. Now we can press Control P and select simply bone. We are not going to deform this. Now if we rotate the bone, as you can see, it will rotate the eyes. And we're going to do the same here. Go out of So select the second shell, shift select the armature, Control Tab, select this bone, Control P, bone. Now this bone will control this shell, but we have this activated, median point, rotate, and it seems that we haven't parented the objects. Go out of pose mode, we'll parent these two objects too. Control Tab, select everything, Alt R if we have any rotation. Now the most interesting part, we're going to make these two bones, which are controlling the eye, point to these two bones, so that when I move this bone, it will control the eye rotation. It's quite simple actually. We can use bone constraints for that. Let's select this bone, come here to bone constraints, and we have a few tracking options here. We will select the damp track, which is a simple one, and select the armature object as a target, and it's called MetaRig in our case. We can call it anything. And let's select the bone with this eyedropper tool. Now I hope it's working. If we move this, it will control this bone. And the same here, damp track, MetaRig, select this bone. Now it's ready. We can move the parent bone, and this will move the eyes. Go out of pose mode, Alt H to unhide everything. Go back to pose mode. Now you can see we can control the rotation of the eye. Now we can rig the hair. Go out of pose mode, select the hair. We can simply parent the hair to the head bone. For example, let's hide the head, select the hair, shift select the skeleton, Control Tab, select the head bone, Control P, and bone. This way the head bone will control the hair too. We can also parent the eyelashes to the head bone. Actually, this is not what you normally do in more professional rigging, but in our case, for simple posing, we are going to do that. Yeah, we can parent the eyelashes too, actually. We'll see. Now I guess everything is controlled with this head bone. And the only thing we haven't rigged yet is the inner mouth objects. So we are going to do that too. Select all the bones, Alt R, Alt G. So go to edit mode of the bones, and we're going to create a new bone for inner mouth objects, which is derived from the head bone, which is the child of the head bone. We can delete this bone. And now we can parent all these smaller objects to that bone. So let's hide everything. So we can select these objects and then select the armature. It should be active selection. Control Tab to go to pose mode. Select this object. Control P and bone. Now all these inner mouth objects are parented to that bone, which is also controlled by the head bone because it's a direct child of the head bone. Control Tab to go to object mode, Alt H. So yeah, I think rigging process is finished. But again, in real life projects, you're not going to do exactly the same as we did here. You create a lot more bones, for example, to control the hair, to control the mouth opening, the eyelids, etc. But for our simple posing purposes, this is more than enough. Now it's a challenge time and you know what you're going to do. Please rig your character before moving on to the next lesson, because in the next lesson we will create a small environment for our character and then we'll pose our character. For that you definitely need to rig your model. So please go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we're going to test our skills and create a simple pose. I created a few poses for demonstration, so let's go to rendered view. Also created very simple scene with one light here, and tried to create a few poses. This is one of them. Here we changed the legs, the hands, As you can see, the arms, of course there are some problems, some weird deformations, and there is no facial expression here. And this one is a bit more complex. Here we have done a bit more work, and as you can see, there is no facial expression, only the eyes are rotated. The hair, nothing has changed. And the chair is downloaded from sketchfab.com, as you can see, and a big thanks for this person, Shuvalov.d, who made this available for free. It looks amazing. Yeah, you can use this chair or any other chair. Maybe you have made your own chair. So as I said, this pose took a little more time, but there are some problems here, especially you can see on the arm there is this weird deformation. We have problem here, and I'll show you the way to fix them in one of the future videos, so don't worry about that. Also, to create these, you need to have really good reference images. You need to see clearly what happens with the human body, what kind of deformations, what kind of stretch you have when you pose a character. You can take a photo of yourself while sitting on a chair, but I have collected a lot of reference images from Pinterest, from Google Images. All of them are used for reference purposes only. I'll show you them quickly now. So these are the images that I downloaded from the internet. This one, for example, I used this one. Also this one for sitting, and you can use any other, and we're going to try to replicate this pose because this has great facial expression and quite simple to replicate. We're going to use that, and I strongly suggest creating any other poses from these images by looking at them. You can find other images online or take a photo of yourself. Whatever you do, I strongly suggest creating at least 3 different poses. Well, this is our character, which we rigged in the last few lessons. And before changing anything here on this character, please duplicate the blend file because you need a backup. Don't forget to do that because we're going to apply the modifiers now to prevent some conflict in the future. So let's select the shirt, go to modifiers. I'd like to apply the multi-res modifier with 1 level of subdivision because, yeah, this subdivision is enough. Select other objects, for example the hands. We have multi-res, we don't need any subdivision level, so let's get rid of that. I'm not applying it, I just got rid of that. Mirror modifier, we need to apply that. On the trousers, let's increase the multi-res level because it really helps with the deformation, as you can see here. So 1 level of deformation, this is really good. Apply. For the legs, apply the mirror modifier. I am leaving the armature because without it we cannot rig or pose and can't do any deformation. So we definitely need to leave that. So the shoes, yeah, 1 level of subdivision, apply it. Mirror, apply. We don't have to separate the shoes from each other, but if we ever need to do that, we can do it always in the future. The head, let's enable multi-res modifier. Let's see 1 more level of subdivision. It will help us a lot, but it's a bit too much of polygons. As you can see, the poly count will increase greatly if we apply it. Well, let's apply with this high poly version because this allows us to create very nice facial expressions. Let's apply. And the only modifier that we need to have on these objects is this armature modifier. Now we are ready to bring in the reference image. We can bring it here, or we can use a second screen, but I'm going to bring it here. Let's change the editor type to image editor, and we'll bring in that reference image, which we'll call confused because she looks confused, right? Now we can start posing. So let's select the bones, go to pose mode and start changing. I think she leaned forward a little like that. Like that, but we need to change the head a little. The shoulders are raised. You can raise them even more for extra exaggeration. While posing, especially while rotating the bones, we often prefer to use local orientations. Here, for example, I can change the orientation to local and RY to rotate it around its own y-axis. We could have copied the transformations from one side to the other, but it's better to have irregularity, not perfect symmetry. We can, for example, raise one shoulder a little more than the other so that it looks more natural. To rotate this arm, for example, we can use local orientation and press RX, RZ, RY. As you can see, while I am rotating the head, the mouth is opened, which might not be what we want. This is happening because we haven't tweaked the deformations very well. We haven't looked at how to weight paint. Also, don't forget to switch between global and local orientations while you're deforming for more flexibility. Another really useful tip here, please pay attention, especially when you can't select the bones and you get confused, right? Like in this situation, you can come to the armature properties, come to viewport display, and you can change the display option here from octahedral to wire. And this way you can see the hands and you can easily select the bones. Not very easily, but you don't get confused. Your view is not blocked. You can also rotate a few bones at the same time by changing the orientation to local and changing the pivot point to individual origins. RX, for example, you can see both bones at the same time, which is a really handy option. RX, and we change the deformation. I think we can exaggerate the shoulders even more, like that, RZ, maybe, no, RX. The only thing that I'd like to change now is the deformation on the face. It's looking weird, and it's happening because the face, the lower part of the face, especially the chin, is more affected by the bone on the neck, not the bone inside the head. So we need to change that. We need to change the balance and weight. For that, we can go out of edit pose mode. We can select the bones, right? And then shift select the head, Control tab, and go to weight paint. And while holding down Alt, you can select the bones and see how much weight they have on the 3D mesh. You can see that the bone on the neck is affecting the lower part of the face, especially the jaw. So we need to remove this influence. For that, we will change to paintbrush. Let's increase, and holding down Control, you can clean the influence. And as you can see, it's even affecting the nose and upper parts of the face. So we need to remove that and limit the effect to the neck only. So let's go ahead, go to object mode, hide the hair, select the skeleton again, shift select the head, Control tab, go to weight paint, Alt select the bones. You can hold down Alt and left click to select the bones and the areas which they affect. Hold down Control to remove the influence. If you paint without holding down Control, you paint the weights, but you need to hold down Alt and remove the weight instead. And we can blur these areas by holding down Shift. We can blur the effect a little. I'll select the head bone, and here we paint the influence. We will affect the face fully by the head bone, not by the neck bone or any other bones. So let's do that. You can hold down Shift to smooth out the influence. Control tab, go to object mode. Now we have given full control of the head to the head bone, and the neck bone doesn't affect the chin or any other part of the face. Alt H to unhide the hair. Select the bones. Control tab to go to pose mode. Select this eye bone, eye controller and we can move it there. So I think the pose is ready, but we need to create the facial expression for that. We are going to create the facial expression in a separate lesson. We will also fix some deformation problems in the future video. And now it's time for quick questions. So the first question: how do you change the bone shapes when they block your view? Sometimes when the bones are very close to each other, like here on the fingers, it's difficult and a little confusing to select the bones to understand what's happening on the mesh. So you can change the bone shape to wire from the armature properties, viewport display and display as. You can display them as wires, and now it's much more understandable. And this is happening because we set the armature to look in front of the other objects. If you uncheck it, it's easier to see, but in some cases you really need to set it look in front of the character. So we did it here, and you can easily change the armature shape to wire and see everything. It's best of both worlds, so you can do all that in the viewport display options of armature properties. Next question: which orientation do we often use when transforming bones? Well, when we are posing our character by transforming bones, especially for rotation, we need to use local transform orientations. It makes it a lot easier to rotate, for example, the fingers, and help you avoid some undesired deformations. The last question: how can you properly rotate multiple bones at once? Well, we can select multiple bones and change the pivot point from median point to individual origins. And also don't forget to change the orientation type to local, not any other thing here. Well, that was all for this lesson. See you in the next one. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to transfer this deformation information and save it as shape keys and fix some deformation errors. Also, we will create a nice facial expression using that method. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, we will select the mesh objects and transfer this armature information, the deformation information by armature, and save it as shape keys. So in order to do that, for example, let's select the shirt, go to armature modifier, and from this drop down menu we can save this as shape key. And when we go to object data properties, shape keys, we have automatically created the basis and armature shape keys. Don't do this now because it will interpolate from this current deformation. For this to work, we can go to armature and turn off armature, go back to shape keys, and now you can see this shape is saved as a shape key. This doesn't mean that we get rid of this armature. We can use it for creating other shapes. And remember, this method is only used for posing. It is not for animation. You cannot animate this way. For animation, we can fix things by using other modifiers and also weight painting the mesh correctly. And we will not do this for all other objects because we only need to correct some deformations on the shirt, and we need to create facial expression on the face. So we will do this only for these two objects. But when you create other poses, you might see some incorrect deformations, and to fix them in that pose, you can apply the armature modifier as shape key. I mean, you can save that information as shape key and fix it there. But for our purpose, we don't have to change other things, only the face and the shirt. So let's come here and save as a shape key. Now we can turn off armature modifier and change the shape key. Now, while this new shape key is selected, we can make changes and create the facial expression. But let's rename this first. This is really important because you might create other poses and save them as more shape keys. All of them will have the same armature name, armature 001, etc. So you really need to know which shape you have saved. So let's call it confused. And you need to call the objects with the same name because all of them are in this confused pose. So now we can create the facial expression like this. We will try to create that. We normally made the change in the edit mode, as you remember, but we can also go to sculpt mode and sculpt some shapes here. So let's go first in edit mode. We will enable proportional editing. Let's see what we can do. I think we can stop here. She's looking more like confused slash angry slash disgusted, right? Not only confused. You can spend more time on it and improve the look, the expression, and make her look more like the reference. And I really suggest you do that. But now we will move on to fixing some deformations on the shirt. So let's change to the shirt. We go back to object mode. So let's hide the skeleton in the object mode, and we go to sculpt mode right here and sculpt, fix some issues on the shirt. So here we can give some volume here. Let's go take the draw brush, give some volume. Well, that was all that I wanted to do in this lesson. Now, please try to create at least 3 poses and show your work on our Discord server. It's an extra challenge, but we also have quick questions. Now it's time for that. So in this lesson, we only have 2 questions. First question, how do you properly save and edit armature deformations as shape keys? Well, first you select the object, in my case it's hands, and you go to modifiers tab and you find the armature modifier, right? And you save the armature deformation as shape keys here. And let's save that actually. After you save, you need to disable the armature modifier because we will control from then on, we control the shape with the shape key here. Change the number to 1, you see the shape. Also, you really need to change the name of the shape key to whatever pose you're creating. In my case, it's confused. After that, you can go ahead and start editing the shape. The second question, what else can we use to edit shape keys apart from modeling tools? Well, that's easy. While the shape key is active, you can go to sculpting and edit the shape using sculpting tools. Well, that was all for this lesson. See you in the next one. In this lesson, we're going to start to finalize our project. We will create one last pose. I will create one last pose, but I really ask you to continue creating more poses, to practice even more. This way you will prepare yourself for the next part of the journey for character animation. For the final pose, I chose a few options and I think I probably go with this pose. Again, this image is used for reference purposes only. I downloaded from Pinterest. There are other options for you, just check them out. We could have chosen this or this one, But again, it's up to you. You can decide what to choose and you can create your own version of the pose. So please choose one pose and try to recreate that. After you have finished, you can continue experimenting with other poses. So let's get started. I will bring the reference image here again. So let's change this editor to image editor and bring in the image. I chose this pose because it looks easy and you can see the character face clearly. So let's go select the bones, go to pose mode, and we will start recreating that. We can even scale the bones a little to make the character's arm a little longer, but we need to scale the next bone down so that it is not too big, the arm is not too big, right? So we can be a little creative. We don't have to follow exactly the same shape, as you can see. And if you noticed, I scaled the arms, the hands here and there. And actually it's not generally recommended to scale after you have rigged, but I scaled the hands to make them look a little better for this particular shot. And you can always scale them back. Once you have finished, you can press A to select everything and Alt S to reset the scaling. But for now, I think it's generally looking good. Now we can apply these shapes as shape keys and tweak a few areas, fix a few issues here and there, and create a smiling facial expression. Very simple one. And I hope you have learned how to save these deformations as shape keys in the last lesson. We will be changing a few things. Let's start from the face because we will create the facial expression. So let's apply this shape as shape key. And we have automatically created these shape keys. We need to disable the armature for now and enable the shape key. Also, we should rename it. Let's call it relaxed. So let's apply the armature modifier as a shape key for this shirt. But before doing that, I'd like to show you one thing. You can enable preserve volume in order to keep volume a little better. As you can see, if I uncheck it, this is what was before, and if you try to preserve volume, it makes things slightly better. And let's apply this shape as a shape key, disable it, relaxed, enable this. For this one too, we will enable preserve volume. As you can see, it can fix a few areas. Let's apply as shape key, disable, enable the shape key, rename. For the shoes and legs, I think for this particular pose we don't have to do anything. Now we will create a simple smiling face. We will do that in edit mode. Let's go to edit mode, select a few vertices. We can also sculpt a little shape. Let's go to sculpting. Yeah, I think this makes things slightly more interesting. Let's go to material preview and fix anything. If we see, any problems here, I think we need to fix something here. So overall it's looking okay. Now we can move on to the shirt and fix any deformation issues there. So on the shirt we can fix a few areas like this, around the neck maybe. Let's actually hide the skeleton by pressing H. Let's go to edit mode. First we will try in edit mode if we can fix anything. Well, we are going to stop here. This lesson has largely been demonstration and practice. That's why I am going to challenge you to create a really nice final pose of your character. Please do a few alternatives and finalize the one that you like most, and this will be your final character pose. So please go ahead and do that. Create a few character poses, choose the best one, try to finalize it, and we will meet again in the next lesson. In this video, we're going to light our character and also create a nice background. But before all that, I'm going to fix some issues related to the eye. So let's go back to outliner here. I didn't even notice that the eyelashes are in the wrong place. We will also bring down the upper eyelids a little. So let's hide the eyelashes, hide the hair, and we'll go to sculpting. Alt H to unhide everything. We'll hide the skeleton for now. Again, hide the hair. Now we'll correct the eyelashes a little. For that, we will go back to sculpting, and I'll show you a few tricks to fix these strange shapes on the eyelashes in sculpt mode. If you go to edit mode, for example, you can see everything is out of place and the topology is really ugly. So let's fix that. We will turn on wireframe in sculpt mode. And the first thing we're going to use is the relax pinch brush. You have used it. I hope you remember. You hold down shift and this works like magic. As you can see, it fixed the topology right away. And then you can use the smooth brush and fix the edge flow even more, like that, just like this. Now in edit mode, we can put the eyelashes in its place. Go to edit mode, select this loop. So we will do the same with the second eyelash. Shift spacebar and take the relax pinch brush. Hold down shift to correct the topology. Take the smooth brush by pressing S. Now I think the eyes and the eyelashes are fixed. We have one more thing that's left about the eyes. It's the material of the eye. To see what I mean, I'm going to bring in a light and go to rendered view. Actually, let's put the light here, go to rendered view, and if you look at the eyes, they are a bit too dark. It feels like the eyes are kind of tinted, so we're going to fix that now. Let's go to shading, select the outer eye material, and it's a really quick fix. Let's bring in transparent shader, bring in mix shader, Shift A, mix shader. We're going to mix transparent with this Principled BSDF, but as a factor, we're going to use light path node and specifically this shadow ray output, and we will plug this into the material output and everything is fixed. So please do that to the outer eye material, which is the outer shell, the cornea. Now we can think about lighting our scene. Let's press Z and go to render view. Currently everything is default and we are using Eevee. I think we have been using Eevee since the beginning, so there is no big difference here. But if you want to use cycles, you can. As you can see, they look almost identical because we're using textures mostly for our materials. That's why there is no big difference here. But Eevee is much faster. That's why we are going to use Eevee. The only thing that you need to do here is to turn on ray tracing. I believe you have already done that. And everything else is default now. We will come back to Eevee settings later, I think in the next video, and do a few things here. And another thing we are going to deal with is the world settings. And the only thing we change here is the strength. We bring this down to a small number, 0.12 or something, because I want to light my character primarily using the light objects. Now, to clean up our scene and see the character better, we can come here to viewport overlay settings, turn off floor and the axis and also the 3D cursor so that we can see the character much better. Now let's select the light, and one thing that I want you to know is these highlights on the eye. These are coming from our lamp, so we can increase the radius of our lamp to, for example, 0.06, and they're a little bigger. We can increase it even more, but they start to fade away. I think 0.12 is a good number. We can also increase the strength, the power of our light. Remember, I'm changing everything from the light properties. Now we can duplicate this light, Shift D, and put it about here. As you can see, it's also reflecting on the character's eye, but it's a bit too powerful. Let's bring the number down to 10 and change the radius back to 0.06. So it's looking quite good. Now we will create a few more lights for fill lights, for rim lights. We might change the color of those lights. Now let's duplicate the lights. Let's put it about here. Now we are seeing some highlights if we put it around here and change the color to bluish color like this. We will create one more light over here and we'll create some highlights here. So this is really an iterative and creative process. You can change the lights, you can change the light colors, change the positions until you like your setup. So it's a very simple setup. We placed a bunch of lights. We will definitely change positions, colors, and strengths once we bring in a camera and point to our character. So what we're going to do now is to select all light objects and put them in a separate collection. You can select one of them, press Shift G, and you can select all of them by type, all the objects which are type of light. So press M, light source something. We brought all of them into a separate collection. We can add an empty like this and parent all lights to an empty. Select all objects, and the empty is the active selection. Control P to object. Now the empty can control all lights. We can now rotate the empty to rotate the lights like that, but you can still change the position of individual lights, so don't worry about that. So the next thing we're going to deal with is the background. We will create a nice gradient background. So let's go to shading. From here we change from object to world. Now we can use nodes to control our world lighting. We'll bring in gradient texture, bring in color ramp, plug this color to factor, and this color, I'm going to copy this color here, Control C, and we'll put here. The other color will be kind of lighter gray, so this will be our gradient background. Let's see how this looks. This is a bit stronger. We're going to plug this through this background. Now we can control the strength. We need to rotate this. In order for that, we will select the gradient texture, press Ctrl T, and if Ctrl T doesn't work, please enable Node Wrangler add-on. I mentioned this a few times. WR Node Wrangler, please enable that. And we will use camera coordinates so that the gradient never changes when we rotate the camera. And we need to change the gradient texture from linear to spherical. Now we lost our white spot. In order to see it better, we will change it to completely white. We can change the location. Actually, we can change the Z location. So hold down Shift and change this number until you see the light. Wow, yeah, I saw the light. Now I can scale this along Y-axis, just like that. So, and scale it down along X. So this is very subtle, and in the next lesson when we bring in a camera, we'll go back to shading and change these numbers again. But I really want you to remember how we created this gradient texture on the background. You can always go to shading and see how we made this. Now we can stop here and it's time for quick questions. So, as always, please pause the video after each question and try to remember the answer. Try to answer it yourself before moving on to the next question. So the first question, how did we correct the topology of the eyelashes? Well, we did it in sculpting. We select the eyelashes, go to sculpting, and we turn on wireframe view to see the topology. We mostly use two brushes. The first one is relax pinch and the second one is the smooth brush. The next question, what did we do to clean up the viewport to see the character better? Well, it's quite simple. You go to viewport overlays menu and you turn on the things that you don't want to see. For example, we turned off floor, turned off different axes, and other things here. You can also turn off visibility for certain objects in the selectability and visibility menu. For example, you can turn off light objects. You can turn off the visibility of light objects or empties, etc. So this is a very handy menu too. The next question, how did we fix the shadow issue of the outer eye material? Well, you can always go back in the video and see what we did. For the cornea material, we mixed the principled with transparent BSDF, and as a factor we used the shadow ray output of the light path node. So the final question, how do you select multiple objects of the same type at once? So it was pretty easy. In object mode, you select one object type and press Shift G and choose type to select all other objects of type light. So that was all for this lesson. See you in the next one. In this lesson, we're going to set up a camera and change color management in render properties to improve overall look. And we will do a final render. So let's bring in a camera, Shift A. So let's bring in a camera, Shift A, camera. I hope you know some basic camera controls. In order to look from the camera, you press 0, and you can bring the camera to the view that you are in by pressing Ctrl Alt 0, and you bring the camera to where you were. Now I'd like to change the resolution of the camera, the aspect ratio. For that, let's go to Output Settings and change the resolution. We will not have 1920 by 1080, we will have the vertical version of this, which means 1080 by 1920. So it's basically the same resolution but vertical. And while looking from the camera, you can select the camera and press G to move the camera. You can press G once and press middle mouse button once and move the cursor up and down to zoom in and out. You can also right click and adjust the focal length, which is also kind of zooming in and out. You can do that from here too, the focal length, as you can see. And another really cool way of controlling the camera while looking at from the camera, you can press N, come to View, and lock the camera to view. This way, when you move around the scene, you take the camera with you. So it's default navigation that you already know, but you are carrying the camera with you. You can put the camera in the nice position, and then don't forget to uncheck this camera to view lock. Now, once you put the camera in a certain position, you can duplicate this camera, Shift D, and put it from a different angle to take a different photo, and press 0. And when you press 0, you are still looking from the first camera, not this newly created camera. In order to activate this camera, you should press Ctrl 0. This is definitely not the best angle, I think. Maybe like this, right? So select this first camera. I think we're going to render this image first. I think this is a better angle. Let's enable bone visibility and change the eye rotation a little, like that. Now I think we can render an image. Let's press F12. Wow, that's a fantastic render right here. This is happening because we forgot to disable the armature modifier in render. So let's come here and disable the armature modifier in rendered view 2 for all these objects so that we don't see that nightmare. Let's check again. So the great thing about Eevee is it renders so fast. Now we can keep this image to compare with what we're going to do. Let's save it. Now we will try to improve the overall look by changing color management options in render properties here. So go to render properties, go down to color management, and we can try a few things here. The first one is view transform. Default is AGX, as you can see. This view transform removes a lot of bright colors and tries to more like in real life, but we need bright colors. If you need bright, vibrant colors, you need to change this to Chronos PBR neutral. The next thing is look. It's basically contrast. I always change this to medium high contrast. And the next thing we probably want to change is the exposure 1, for example. And I really love this vibrant look. So, and we can also increase the sample count to, for example, 256. We can also improve the render quality a lot by increasing the resolution. Instead of 100, test with 200%. This will double the resolution and the image will be very sharp. So let's render it by pressing F12. So it took a bit more time, but the image is quite sharp and very clear, as you can see. Well, this is already a great render. We can keep it as our final render. But I don't want to stop here, and in the next lesson I'm going to show you how to make it even more beautiful by applying some final touches. Now it's time for quick questions. Well, I think this was one of the easiest lessons, and the questions are also easy. Do you remember any shortcuts to control the camera? Well, we can press numpad 0 to look from the camera. We can activate another camera by selecting the camera and pressing Ctrl numpad 0. We can bring the active camera to the view by pressing Ctrl Alt plus numpad 0. While looking from the camera, we can press G to move the camera. By pressing G and middle mouse button once and moving the mouse up and down, We can zoom in and out. We can right click and change the focal length this way too. We can also lock the camera to view and bring the camera with us wherever we go. The next question, what are the two simple ways of improving Eevee renders? Well, this question I think is extremely simple. You can increase the sample counts and we can also increase the resolution percentage here. For Eevee, this is not a big deal because it renders so fast. For cycles, this will improve the quality greatly but increase the time as well. So that was all for this lesson. I hope to see you in the next one. Well, in this lesson we're going to apply final touches to our project. So our character is already looking quite good, but we can change a few things. Specifically, we're going to change the material color of the shirt and improve the shape a little. And also we're going to deal with the hair. We test different colors and we will also change the shape of the hair a little. So let's start with the hair. We have made the hair using simple curves. But to our surprise, curves also have shape keys. So we can create the basic shape key and the shape key that we want to change. We want to apply a custom shape. So with the key 1 selected, go to edit mode and change the hair shape a little. We can do that in material preview or in rendered view. So this is the new shape of the hair. This is the one that we had before. From different angles you can see the new shape is a little better. Especially from this angle you can see the new shape covers the head a little better. Now the second thing we can change about hair is the hair color. So let's go to shading, go to rendered view, go to object, select hair. So there are a few things we can do here to change the color of the hair, but before we do that, let's duplicate this hair material and call it, for example, hair blonde or something, and try to change the hair to blonde. I think we could change it from here, mostly from the second mix RGB node. So this is the color of the hair that I went for the shot. You can see I changed these two colors. A is slightly reddish color, but mostly white. B is pure white. I changed the colors here too, but they don't affect the overall color very much. For example, we can change the second color here and you see the effect only on the highlights. Now they're kind of bluish, a little blue, you can see here. Let's change this to pure white, something like this. And the color in a slot can also change some individual strings, the color of some individual strings. So we can set it to slightly reddish white. And these green red colors are coming from the lights, so we don't worry about them. One more thing I did was to remove the information from metallic and made the hair fully metallic. And another thing, I changed the noise to the bump from this very fine noise. I changed it to this noise, which was a little larger, because with this very fine noise we can see some noise on the overall hair. This is very noisy because the scale of this noise is very small, it's very fine, so I used this noise, which was larger. Control Z to go back. But it's again up to you. You can create an entirely new noise and use it as bump noise, but yeah, we went for this. So definitely play with the nodes here in the hair color, but don't forget to duplicate the material before doing that, because you always want to go back to the previous material if you want. So you need to have some options here. Now we can think about the shirt and what we can do with it. Again, we will duplicate the material. Let's duplicate it and call it maybe shirt. For the trousers, we have the previous material. For the shirt, we have the new material. Now we can change the color. For that, we will use hue saturation value node. Shift A, hue saturation value. You can definitely paint on this color, but since the colors are mixed or multiplied, it's difficult to achieve one color quickly by painting. We will test hue saturation value. So here you have a lot of options. Just change the hue. You can also input numbers manually, not only 0.1 or 2, 3. You can say, for example, 0.12 or something. Let's increase the saturation a little. This is a really easy way to change the color of the shirt. But remember, you shouldn't apply this shirt material to the trousers. If you do that, you will see the color on the trousers also changed, just like that, which might not be what you intended. We can also change the background color. I don't want to change it. I simply want to brighten it up. I want it to be a bit brighter. So make it brighter. Maybe move the sliders a little. You can change the color to, I don't know, maybe more yellowish color, bluish tint. So one last thing that we can do about the shirt is to increase the resolution on it to remove, for example, this faceted look. Let's go to modifiers and add subdivision surface. So we don't see that boxy shape anymore now, and the shirt got smoother overall. And as a bonus, I'm going to show you how to create a bit more colorful hair. We will duplicate the hair material by pressing this new material icon and call it, I don't know, colorful, and change the colors back to darker colors. Now you can change the second colors in the mix color nodes to give it very unique color. We can change the mix here. So don't forget to change this from multiply to mix. I forgot to do that. Now we can see both colors, this bluish purple and this red color. Now you can change these two colors to anything you want, and to change the overall highlight, you can play with these two color ramps. Well, that was all that I wanted to show you in this video. Please try to apply all these changes, the final touches, and if possible, change the lighting, the background, camera settings, and do a final render. Share your work on our Discord community server. You know how to find us. You can go to the last video in this course and go to the resources section. You'll see the link to our Discord server. So please share your work, and I will see you very soon.